Christine Brennan just exposed the WNBA in a major way.
Christine Brennan is one of the best sports writers in the country, has been for a long time.
Caitlin Clark is way more important to the WNBA than Tiger Woods was to men's golf, even though he was huge. And to then see this negativity, like why and what should have been done? I look seriously at the leadership of the WNBA. And how could you not be prepared for this moment? You've seen it happening in the Big Ten. You've seen it at Iowa. You see these TV ratings.
The WNBA just got exposed in the most embarrassing way possible. Legendary USA Today journalist Christine Brennan decided she'd had enough of the nonsense and dropped a truth bomb so massive it practically flattened league headquarters. We're talking about receipts, pettiness, and a complete gutting of the WNBA's credibility when it comes to how they've mishandled Caitlin Clark. It's a brutal look that should have everyone from the commissioner's office to jealous vets shaking in their squeaky shoes. And seriously, what do you think? Is this epic faceplant by the WNBA all about jealousy over Caitlin Clark, or is it straight-up clown-level incompetence? Let me know in the comments below if you think the WNBA players are jealous. Let's go.
It came out what she had to say in this book was going to shake the ground of the WNBA. She's been around for a very long time, and she knows the inner and outer workings of this league. Christine Brennan let it be known in multiple interviews that the WNBA was not ready for a superstar like Caitlin Clark.
So, here's how this absolute soap opera began. Christine Brennan, who's basically covered more women's hoops than half the players in the league have spent years on Earth, decided to write a book, and not some cutesy, yay girl power fluff either. Nope. She went full investigative pitbull, tearing into how badly the league bungled the once-in-a-lifetime Caitlin Clark moment. This wasn't just a spicy hot take. This was scorched earth journalism, and the aftershocks are still rattling the WNBA.
The thing I don't get, Christine, is that in the case of Tiger and in the case of Jordan, the other players and the league around them, in Tiger's case, the PGA Tour, realized that a rising tide raises all boats and were incredibly supportive of Tiger and Jordan. With Caitlin, it seems like, for whatever reason, she's polarizing. Like she's been hit with more flagrant fouls than any player ever this year. They tried to come at you when you were writing a story and said, don't ask questions about why people don't like Caitlin Clark. But I'm going to ask you, Christine, why is she polarizing in your opinion? Why do people not embrace the phenomenon that is Caitlin Clark?
Brennan didn't come to hand out participation trophies. She pulled back the curtain on exactly how clueless, jealous, and frankly lazy the WNBA powers that be were when the biggest star women's basketball has ever seen dropped into their laps. Caitlin Clark isn't just another prospect. She's the singular force who took the WNBA from background noise to center stage. And apparently, instead of popping champagne, the league was popping antacids because they hated every minute of their own sudden relevance.
One of the big points in the book, I deal with all of this and my research and reporting, because I was perplexed as well. I mean, this is the greatest moment ever for the WNBA. Yep. We wish it happened sooner. Of course we wish it happened sooner. There were amazing players who, as you know, both you guys know, were toiling in obscurity, the male-dominated mainstream sports media ignoring them.
Here's one of the jaw-dropping nuggets from Brennan's expose. The day after Caitlin officially declared for the 2024 draft, she rang up a senior league official for their take. You'd think there'd be fireworks, right? Hype? Confetti cannons? Try again. This league suit told her, dead serious, that Clark coming in was the biggest thing since Maya Moore. Maya Moore. No disrespect to a legend, but outside hardcore hoop heads, Maya was basically invisible to mainstream America. Folks couldn't have picked her out of a grocery line.
From home like everybody else. And I think, guys, that actually helped me understand as a journalist the fascination, because I've covered a lot over my career and been very fortunate to be at Wimbledon's and Super Bowls and Tiger Woods and you name it, I've covered it. And I'm so lucky to have done that. And I found myself fascinated, like, who is this? And I'm getting text messages from guys who would never have watched a second of women's basketball. Good guys, they want their daughters to play sports. I mean, good people, but just And they're texting, are you there? I'm watching. Are you seeing this performance? And that told me something that I actually was very helpful to be at home watching it versus being on press row, talking to a bunch of other journalists, that like, okay, there's something going on in the country here. And it's everyone's fascinated, and people are standing in line for hours in the cold around the Big Ten, this barnstorming tour. And it's all about a basketball player who happens to be a woman.
And this is where Brennan's decades of experience shine. She instantly knew what these clowns didn't. Caitlin Clark wasn't just another great player. She was about to become a cultural avalanche, one that would bury every stale narrative about the WNBA being a niche sport. While these clueless execs were busy comparing her to stars who barely moved the viewership needle, Brennan could already see that the entire nation was about to be strapped in for the Caitlin Clark show. And how did the league respond to this priceless heads up? They sat on their hands and did absolutely nothing. It's almost impressive how incompetent you have to be to miss the easiest marketing layup in sports history. But it only gets more jaw-dropping. Brennan's book lays it all out. The WNBA suits didn't just fail to prep for the Caitlin Clark effect, they couldn't even imagine it. They were so resigned to being the perpetual backbench of pro sports, so used to irrelevance, that they literally couldn't fathom a world where people cared about their product. Picture running a bakery and being stunned when people actually show up to buy bread. That's the level of pathetic Brennan uncovered.
Unauthorized, which is not ominous at all. You want it to be unauthorized because I can tell the truth, unvarnished. Caitlin's quoted throughout the book. She was great answering any question I asked her. But dealing with these important issues. So you've got a 74% black league. We understand this. I mean, I'm white. Ramona, I think you guys are white.
Yeah.
We have no idea what it's like to be black in America. And I say that. Let's be brutally honest here. Here comes a white woman from Iowa, and she's going to be the biggest superstar. Now, absolutely, the spotlight's shining on her. Finally, it's shining on all these other players who deserved it for years but never got it. And that's a wonderful turn of events. But instead of focusing on the positives, sadly, the WNBA players, so many of them, not all.
And it's not like nobody saw this coming. Brennan's reporting makes it crystal clear that plenty of journalists and even YouTube creators had been following Clark since her Iowa days, already waving neon signs that she was something special. Her fan base was massive, engaged, and ready to buy out arenas the second she turned pro. But the WNBA front office apparently couldn't even be bothered to look up from their spreadsheets. Meanwhile, the stats tell the entire story. In 2023, the Fever's attendance hovered around 4,000 per game, about the size of a Texas high school gym on a slow Tuesday. Then Caitlin Clark arrives for a preseason warm-up, and suddenly fans are lined up outside 2 hours early like it's a Taylor Swift concert. The building security was literally stunned. They'd never seen anything like it.
And an antagonist. And I've argued that the NBA could use a little bit more of hero and villain to popularize the sport again. The WNBA does not need that, because for a lot of America, Caitlin Clark is the hero. And anyone that comes to Caitlin Clark's defense is a hero. And everyone that flagrantly fouls her, speaks poorly of her, acts like she's not great is the villain, and then vice versa on that. How big of a part of the story is that when you look at the conflict surrounding Caitlin Clark?
So how did the WNBA capitalize on this tidal wave of new fans? Did they roll out the red carpet for their generational cash cow? Try orchestrating dazzling media campaigns? Of course not. They responded like grumpy old neighbors, practically annoyed that all these new eyeballs were finally paying attention. It's almost like they preferred their little pond to suddenly being the ocean. Absolutely unreal.
We got grown men on talking head shows wanting to fight each other over women's basketball and talking about it, right? We've got all these hot takes about all this going on, Christine. How big of a part of the story is that for you, and is that for this book?
I deal with it for sure in the book. And, I think what we've seen is surprising to me, having covered women's sports as well as men's, for the length of my career.
The jealousy that Brennan uncovers is hands down the most damning part. Her book shows there was a deeply rooted bitterness simmering under the surface. Players, league officials, even legacy media figures couldn't handle the fact that Caitlin Clark, barely a rookie, was drawing more crowds and airtime than veterans who'd been grinding away for a decade. Suddenly, the gyms were packed. The ratings were through the roof. Every podcast wanted a piece, all thanks to Clark.
And here comes Caitlin Clark, and let's say it, and I say it in the book. I'd go into this in depth. a white woman from Iowa in a 74% Black league. That's an issue. The book is the first real journalistic look at this entire season and at Caitlin Clark and what she's done and all these issues that are out there. No holds barred. I shy away from nothing.
And instead of celebrating the fact that the rising tide was lifting everyone's boats, the league and some of its players responded with icy cold shoulders, dirty fouls, and snide little quotes. Refs started swallowing whistles. Media scribes began cranking out think pieces complaining about how Clark was too popular. It's like someone handed them a winning lottery ticket and they complained it wasn't in their favorite color.
And I look at the way players like Diana Taurasi, Brianna Stewart, Cheryl Swoops with her flurry of falsehoods, Cheryl Reeve, the Olympic coach, Gino Auriemma, really tried to minimize her and were very critical of her. That stunned me. You should be saying, this is great. You don't have to cheer for her. You guard her. You play tough. She's not a victim. She loves to throw it at people. She's feisty and tough out there. And that makes her, I think, even more appealing to so many people. But for this group of people to want to say such negative things and be so wrong about her, okay, fine. It's a free country. You can do what you want. But what she's doing by going into the WNBA.
The craziest part is how obvious all of this was to literally anyone paying attention. Caitlin's 4 years at Iowa were a masterclass in building a national brand. She broke records, sold out arenas, and basically turned every ESPN exec into a WNBA fan by sheer force of personality and game. Everyone with half a clue could see that her following would come to the league with her. Everyone except, apparently, the people whose actual job it is to grow women's basketball. They were too busy acting like gatekeepers to notice the gates had been blown off the hinges. Brennan also digs deep into a cultural sickness inside the WNBA that made this meltdown inevitable. There's apparently a twisted mindset in some corners of the league that says mainstream popularity somehow taints the purity of their game. As if millions of new fans, sold-out crowds, and huge TV deals are some kind of sellout sin. Brennan's book exposes how this thinking seeped into the way Clark was treated all season long. Instead of being protected and promoted as the face of the future, she was allowed to become the target of envy-fueled hacks. Players threw cheap shots, coaches popped off with salty comments, and the media tried to spin it like Clark was getting too much attention. Imagine being so backwards that you're offended your league finally matters.
So Caitlin Clark is way more important to the WNBA than Tiger Woods was to men's golf, even though he was huge to men's golf. And to then see this negativity, the next question would be, or your viewers and listeners are probably say, okay, so like why? And what should have been done? And I look seriously at the leadership of the WNBA. And how could you not be prepared for this moment? You've seen it happening in the Big Ten. You've seen it in Iowa. You see these TV ratings. 4 million more, as I said, watching the women than the men. I think it's worth repeating a few times because it is such a stunning statistic, guys.
What's painfully obvious is how the league face-planted the biggest marketing opportunity they've ever had. Here they were sitting on a goldmine, with Caitlin Clark generating more buzz than the WNBA had seen in decades, and somehow they fumbled it like they'd never heard the word promotion before. The merch situation? A total clown show. The scheduling? A string of baffling choices that looked like they were picked by drawing names from a hat. And the overall marketing game plan? It felt like it was run by people who'd be more comfortable running a lemonade stand than a pro sports league. Brennan's book makes it crystal clear. This wasn't just accidental incompetence. It was deliberate blind eye syndrome. They had mountains of data proving Caitlin Clark was their ticket to the moon. But they chose the safe, small world they knew over the terrifying concept of actual success. And look where we are now, smack in the middle of Clark's sophomore season, and the league still can't quite figure out what to do with the monster star power they've lucked into. The TV numbers are still going bonkers whenever she plays. Her jerseys and sneakers are vanishing faster than limited edition Jordans. Every arena she walks into is sold out with fans screaming like it's a rock concert. And yet you still get this awkward vibe that plenty of folks inside the league would rather the whole Caitlin Clark circus just disappear so they could go back to their cozy little echo chamber.
One white, one black. And so we have that moment with these two. But the one thing I know about sports, you need rivalry. That's what makes people watch. They want to watch games of consequence between rivals. They don't want everybody being nice to one another. So the social media is different today than it was in 1979 when it didn't exist. But, I always tell the players, I was told a long time ago, if someone's typing something in and you wouldn't ask their advice, ignore it. So it's a balance, but certainly from a marketing dollars, but corporate partners are stepping up to endorse these players much more so than they were 5 years ago.
Brennan's reporting absolutely torches the league by showing just how deep this dysfunction runs. You've got a league that was on financial life support, barely clinging to relevance, praying for anything to keep it afloat. Then, in walks Caitlin Clark, a generational superstar with mass-market charisma who pulls crowds, TV deals, and sponsors like she's flipping a switch. And what did the league do? They treated it like a nuisance, like a squeaky door they couldn't be bothered to oil. If there's ever been a bigger example of an organization actively working against its own interests, I'd love to see it. The implications here stretch way beyond women's hoops. This is a perfect case study in how big institutions can get so stuck in their outdated ways that they'd rather sabotage the future than embrace change. The WNBA was literally handed a lightning bolt in Caitlin Clark. All they had to do was protect her from jealous drama, market her brilliance, and watch the money and respect roll in. But instead, they chose petty resentment and outdated mindsets. It's like they were offended success showed up wearing a ponytail and Iowa jersey.
Such an incredible moment on a global scale for our game, for our players.
It's like the fans are absolutely incredible. It's the same when we go on the road. Like there's so many people that are showing up in fever gear. It's really affecting, teams all across our league, which is a really great thing. And, really, I think we're just scratching the surface.
One of the most brutal realities Brennan lays out is just how wrong these league insiders read the room. They were so smug, thinking their precious brand was too pure to be tainted by a mainstream breakout. They confused staying niche with being noble, totally forgetting that pro sports exist to entertain as many people as possible. And fixing this would have been laughably simple. Just back Caitlin Clark, shield her from the petty cheap shots, and surf the tidal wave of attention. But instead, they did the exact opposite, basically building speed bumps for their own superstar. Brennan also tears the lid off how new media, the YouTubers, TikTokers, indie reporters, saw all of this coming while the old guard was still dozing. These online voices understood that Caitlin's appeal wasn't limited to hardcore basketball junkies. She was about to become a pop culture mainstay. Meanwhile, the WNBA was stuck in 1998, playing catch-up and fumbling every chance to modernize. From clueless PR blunders to bizarre scheduling that hid marquee games in no-viewership time slots, they proved over and over how out of touch they were.
We're bringing more and more fans to this league, people that have maybe never watched the WNBA before, and it kind of takes your breath away at points.
This wasn't just an oops moment. Brennan makes it painfully obvious. It was almost self-sabotage. The WNBA had the easiest slam dunk of their existence with Clark, yet they treated her like a problem to be contained, not the miracle growth engine she clearly was. Even worse, this rotten attitude seeped straight into the locker rooms and coaching staffs. Instead of realizing Clark was good for everyone's bank account, too many players and coaches acted like her spotlight stole from theirs. Newsflash, it's called "A rising tide lifts all boats," not "Caitlin's attention means you sink." And don't sleep on the global stakes here. Women's hoops is blowing up overseas, and the WNBA had a golden chance to plant its flag as the world's top destination. Caitlin's not just an American sweetheart. She's drawing fans from every corner of the globe. But instead of riding that international momentum, the league's petty dysfunction literally became part of the worldwide story. Brennan's book even details how the on-court cheap shots against Clark weren't just competitive fouls. They were part of a whole ugly culture determined to cut her down to size. Those hits, those hard fouls, the constant trash talk, that was the league's internal jealousy turning into physical intimidation right on national TV. And where was Kathy Engelbert during all this? Where was the commissioner whose entire job is to protect the league's biggest assets? According to Brennan, either clueless or complicit. Neither is a great look. Every time a player got away with a dirty shot on Clark, every time refs swallowed the whistle, it was a glaring sign of a leadership vacuum at the very top. Brennan doesn't pull punches when showing how many easy pivot points the WNBA had. They could have stepped in the second. It was obvious Clark was being systematically targeted. They could have rolled out killer ad campaigns that showcased Clark while boosting her rivals, making everyone more marketable. They could have struck new TV deals, signed bigger sponsorships, and turned this into a dynasty era. Instead, they let it rot. Her book also digs into the backstage politics. Turns out there were whole cliques in the WNBA terrified that Clark's rise would overshadow their own history. Instead of welcoming her, they actively undercut her, making life harder so she'd struggle to shine. Then these same folks pop up online bragging about how women's basketball finally matters, conveniently forgetting they spent all last year undermining the person who made that possible. The hypocrisy is off the charts. Brennan also hammers home how all this petty jealousy didn't just cost Clark, it left money on the table for everyone. Higher ratings, sellout crowds, booming jersey sales. That meant bigger salaries, better facilities, more investment across the board. But too many inside the league acted like Caitlyn's success was a personal threat instead of a payday for them, too. She shows how it's often the older players, coaches, and execs who were most stubborn. Meanwhile, the younger generation was ready to roll out the welcome mat. It's a textbook case of how entrenched thinking can sink even the best opportunities. Bottom line, Christine Brennan's book doesn't just tell the story of Caitlin Clark, it lays bare the WNBA's epic fumble of its greatest chance ever. From petty jealousy to clueless leadership, she exposes it all. Let me know in the comments below if you think the WNBA players are jealous. Like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications so you never miss out. Click the video on the screen, and we will see you in the next one.